For months, something was stirring beneath the surface, invisible to the outside world, yet impossible to ignore for those close enough to sense it. The whispers had been circulating through the grand corridors of Buckingham Palace long before anyone dared to speak them aloud. Empty seats at royal ceremonies, subtle but unmistakable changes to official portraits, quiet, careful speculation from those stationed deep within palace walls. Each signal on its own meant little. Together, they painted a picture far too fragile and far too significant to be spoken of openly, till now. It is Princess Catherine who finally breaks the silence, poised, measured, yet carrying the unmistakable weight of someone about to say something that cannot be unsaid. Her voice, steady yet threaded with emotion, travels through the royal estate like a tremor, not loud enough to shatter walls, but powerful enough to shake the very foundations upon which the monarchy stands. But before we go any further, what she reveals in the moments that follow is something that even the palace's most seasoned insiders did not see coming. Stay with us, because this story is only just beginning. If you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment as this story continues to unfold. Your likes, comments, and shares help this reach the people who need to hear it. Now, as the narrative of the royal family enters uncharted territory, Catherine chooses her opening words with extraordinary care. Each phrase is deliberate, each pause intentional. She is not simply delivering a statement, she is bearing witness to something deeply personal, speaking not from behind the shield of her royal title, but from the raw, unguarded place of a mother fiercely protective of her child. The difficulties surrounding young Prince Louis are not laid out in clinical terms. Instead, they emerge through the weight of what is left unsaid. The word condition hangs in the air, offered carefully, never fully defined, and it is precisely that restraint which makes the room fall completely still. Her voice wavers at certain moments, and in those brief tremors, an entire story is told. The tension between royal duty and maternal instinct, between public composure and private anguish. Those present describe the atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace as almost suffocating, as though the gilded halls themselves had drawn a long, slow breath and refused to release it. Prince William, a man whose public composure rarely cracks, is seen quietly stepping away, leaving behind a trace of tension that does not go unnoticed. Princess Anne's stoic by nature, unshakable by reputation, is visibly shaken. Communication lines within the palace erupt into urgent activity. Across the world, media outlets scramble to verify what insiders had only dared whisper in private. Across social media, Prince Louis's name spreads like wildfire. Hashtags trend within minutes. Messages of concern, hope, and solidarity flood in from every corner of the world, strangers united by worry for a child they have never met, yet feel inexplicably connected to. But behind the digital outpouring, inside the palace itself, the atmosphere is anything but warm. A thick, suffocating tension clings to every corridor. Grief and anxiety move through the building like a quiet storm that refuses to pass. To truly understand why Catherine's words sent shockwaves through the monarchy, we need to step back, because this moment did not arrive without warning. The signs had always been there, faint at first, easy to dismiss. But for those paying close enough attention, a pattern had been quietly assembling itself over time. Prince Louis's appearances had been growing increasingly limited. Photographs were cropped in ways that felt deliberate. His absence from key royal occasions, events he was expected to attend, began to accumulate into something that could no longer be explained away. His name appeared on the official schedule for the royal Easter celebrations. And then nothing. He simply wasn't there. What some initially brushed off as an oversight soon proved impossible to ignore. With each passing public event, balcony appearances, Christmas gatherings, ceremonial occasions, the silence surrounding the young prince grew heavier, louder in its own way, more insistent. Then came the photograph that ignited everything, a family portrait, carefully composed and released to project unity, warmth, and stability, drew immediate scrutiny. Digital forensics experts and photo editing specialists began examining Prince Louis's positioning, his shadow, his posture, the spacing around him. Online forums erupted. Within hours, what the world had been sensing beneath the surface now had a name: Portraitgate. And suddenly, the quiet unease that had been building for months transformed into something far more urgent. Every missing moment carried new meaning. Every absent smile told a story. A deeper, hidden narrative was taking shape, one of quiet suffering tucked behind palace walls, of struggles playing out far from public view, shielded by protocol and carefully managed silence. And here is where the story takes a turn that nobody anticipated. Because what came next from inside those walls would contradict everything the palace had been trying so carefully to project. When Princess Catherine finally spoke, her words carried far beyond the gates of the royal estate. There was boldness in her voice, yes, but also something rawer, something unmistakably personal. She did not speak in the measured, detached language of royal communications. She spoke as a mother. And in doing so, she reminded the world of something the palace often works hard to conceal. That behind the grandeur, the ceremony, and the carefully choreographed appearances, the royal family is composed of human beings, people who worry, who hurt, who love with fierce protectiveness just like any parent anywhere. Buckingham Palace issued a brief official response hours later. Prince Louis, it read, was resting quietly at home, away from public engagements. The public was not satisfied. If anything, the questions multiplied. What kind of silence keeps a young prince from appearing before the world? Why this level of secrecy? Why now? Palace insiders begin surfacing with details, small but telling inconsistencies in official calendars, schedule entries quietly altered, appointments that vanished without explanation. The speculation had gone on for months, but now, those closest to Catherine were beginning to notice something that went beyond rumor. Her inner circle observed a woman gradually withdrawing from the world around her. Private medical appointments, scheduled discreetly and attended under tight security, became a quiet but unmistakable pattern. When analysts began correlating Louis's public absences with a carefully coordinated web of medical supervision, concern deepened into something far more serious. Even the tabloids, outlets that had long kept such stories comfortably in the realm of gossip, began reporting with an unusual, almost unsettling level of precision. Palace briefings grew tense. Conversations behind closed doors became heated exchanges. For the first time in living memory, the monarchy looked genuinely exposed, vulnerable not to political enemies or public scandal, but to something far more intimate and far more human. The turning point arrived quietly, captured in a single image. Catherine was photographed leaving a high-security pediatric medical facility alone, head lowered, flanked by unmarked security vehicles. The photo spread without noise, without fanfare, and yet it hit harder than any headline could. No words were needed. The image said everything. Then came the document that was never supposed to leave the palace. A single misfiled paper, a clerical error in an institution built on meticulous control, found its way out. And what it contained was devastating in its clarity. Prince Louis was named directly in a clinical medical note. The language was technical, cold, and precise: neurodevelopmental tracking, progressive markers, longitudinal surveillance. Individually, these phrases might mean little to an outsider. Together, they assembled a picture that was both medically significant and emotionally overwhelming. The leak shook the palace to its core. King Charles immediately convened an urgent meeting of senior royals. Every seat in that room was filled, with one striking exception. Catherine's chair sat empty, and in an institution where presence is protocol and absence is statement, her decision not to attend spoke louder than anything she could have said. Was this a mother drawing a boundary, a quiet act of defiance, a conscious assertion of maternal authority over royal obligation? The room buzzed with interpretations, none of them comfortable. The exchange that followed was unlike anything those present had witnessed in years. Princess Anne, the royal family's most steadfast pillar of composure, left the room in tears. The rawness of what was spoken within those walls was unprecedented. At the center of it all, caught in the storm raging through those gilded corridors, was Prince Louis, a young child whose well-being had become the unexpected flashpoint for the deepest fractures within the House of Windsor. Centuries of tradition, loyalty, and royal duty collided head-on with something ancient and unstoppable: a mother's love. And then, hours later, something was found. Tucked among family photographs in a private drawer, a handwritten note in Catherine's own hand. What it contained stopped everyone who read it cold. It opened with a line of startling, unguarded honesty. "If you found this, I never had the courage to say it out loud." What followed was not a royal statement. It was a confession. Page after page of sleepless nights spent beside Louis's bed. Consultations with specialists conducted under false names to avoid detection. The crushing, relentless pressure to appear unbroken in front of cameras, composed, graceful, untouchable, while privately, quietly, her entire world was coming apart at the seams. And it was not Catherine alone who was breaking. Prince William, the man the public sees as composed, assured, unshakable, had been silently crumbling too. Behind every carefully maintained public appearance was a father navigating the unbearable tension between the weight of royal duty and the primal, consuming fear of watching his child. Trembling hands, sleepless nights, silent hours spent sitting beside a child's bed, watching, waiting, hoping. These were not the actions of a princess performing her duties. These were the instincts of a mother doing the only thing she knew how to do, love without condition and protect without limit. The letter was not written to seek sympathy or court public attention. It was something far more profound than that. It was a monument, quiet, private, and fierce, to maternal courage. To the kind of bravery that does not announce itself, that operates in the shadows, that makes impossible choices in the middle of the night when no one is watching. Every word Catherine wrote laid something bare. Her vulnerability, her fierce and painstaking protection of Louis, the crushing weight of duty she had carried without complaint, and her unwavering insistence that truth must ultimately stand taller than appearances. The monarchy has spent centuries perfecting the art of concealing private pain behind public pageantry. It has never, not once, been confronted with a revelation this raw, this human, this impossible to manage or spin. And yet the machinery continues to turn, even as it strains under the weight of what has been exposed. Staff move quickly to reinforce security protocols. Legal teams work through the night drafting carefully worded statements. Communication channels are locked down. Every lever the palace knows how to pull is being pulled. But for perhaps the first time, protocol feels inadequate, like trying to hold back a tide with carefully folded paper. Because what has emerged from all of this cannot be contained by a press release. One indisputable truth has surfaced through the noise, the speculation, and the institutional scrambling. Behind the glittering facade, behind centuries of ceremony and carefully maintained tradition, a family is fighting. Not for image, not for legacy, but for love, for safety, and for the basic human freedom to face their greatest challenges on their own terms. What Princess Catherine has revealed is not simply a story about a royal child. It is something far more universal than that. It is a window into the most intimate battlefield of parenthood, a place where no title offers protection and no palace wall provides shelter. It is a reminder that no throne, no crown, no weight of ceremonial obligation can override the deepest human instinct. To protect, to nurture, and to fight for your child with every last piece of yourself. When history looks back on this moment, it will not remember it as a scandal. It will remember it as the moment when love, courage, and truth quietly dismantled centuries of silence, leaving a watching world simultaneously stunned and profoundly moved. But it was one line, a single sentence buried within Catherine's words, that stopped people completely. He is slipping away, and they want me to smile. Those 7 words carried a weight that went far beyond personal grief. They reflected something systemic, something deeply uncomfortable about the machinery of royal life. The relentless expectation to hold it together, to face the cameras, to uphold traditions stretching back generations, even as your private world quietly collapses around you. To perform composure while living in quiet devastation. Days before Catherine made her public statement, William received her handwritten letter privately. He read it alone at Sandringham, the familiar, comforting surroundings of his childhood home offering little comfort now. Meals were brought and left untouched. Hours passed unnoticed. Those who caught a glimpse of him described a face that was pale, hollowed out, yet carrying the unmistakable look of a man arriving at a reckoning he could no longer postpone. The palace's long-standing strategy, carefully managed, meticulously controlled, built on the principle that the institution always comes first, could no longer hold its ground against the weight of reality. Something shifted between them in those quiet hours. William stopped pushing back against Catherine's instincts. He stepped aside and in doing so, gave her something the palace rarely offers anyone: the space to speak her truth. Personal. In that single moment, personal urgency overtook institutional protocol, and something inside the monarchy shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, but deeply and perhaps permanently. The corridors of the palace were already thick with unease. But not even the most seasoned advisors, not even the staff who had served through decades of royal turbulence, could have prepared themselves for what was coming next. Catherine's message had never simply been a disclosure. It was something far more powerful than that. It was a demand, quiet but unrelenting, for justice, for recognition, and for her son Louis to be seen not as a symbol to be managed, but as a child deserving of truth and dignity. The palace's machinery, disciplined in silence, precision, and damage control, scrambled desperately to contain something that had already moved beyond containment. And then, from the most unexpected direction, a force stepped forward. Prince Harry, a man who had spent years on the outside, scrutinized, criticized, dismissed by many as a cautionary tale of royal estrangement, now found himself in a position that no one else occupied. His years of exile, controversy, and quiet observation had given him something rare: the perspective of someone who had lived through exactly what Catherine was now enduring. As he watched the media storm intensify, headlines multiplying, speculation spiraling, Catherine's every movement placed under a microscope, Harry recognized something with absolute clarity. Silence no longer protected anyone. It never had. He did not call through official channels. He did not wait for palace approval, for an assistant's coordination, or for a carefully arranged intermediary. He picked up the phone and called Catherine directly. The moment crackled with intensity. Catherine hesitated, her expression caught somewhere between surprise, caution, and something fragile that looked very much like hope. When Harry spoke, he did not speak as a prince. He did not speak as a rebel or an outsider making a point. He spoke as someone who understood, from the inside, from personal experience, the suffocating weight of public expectation pressing down on a person with no room left to breathe. "I know what it feels like to be silenced," he said, his voice steady and quiet. "You have to tell them. If you don't, they will never understand." For 37 minutes, they talked without interruption. Two voices separated by an ocean, connected by fear, grief, and the kind of resolve that only comes from having nothing left to lose. No aides listened in. No records were kept. And in that unguarded space, Catherine absorbed something she had been quietly desperate for: the simple, sustaining knowledge that she was not alone. Across the Atlantic, in Montecito, Meghan's reaction was one of tense disbelief, a quiet reminder of the fractures that had sent Harry and his family across an ocean in the first place. But Harry was not thinking about divisions. He was thinking about cycles, the relentless, suffocating cycles of fear, concealment, and institutional silence that had consumed his own life, and that he could now see consuming the people he had left behind. He saw in Louis's story an echo of his own. The loneliness, the impossible expectations, the pain of being misunderstood inside a system that prioritizes image above all else. Catherine would later describe Harry's words as the nudge I needed, a reminder, arriving at precisely the right moment, that speaking the truth was not an act of betrayal. It was an act of courage. She prepared herself to speak with a clarity and confidence she had not felt in months. But the surprises were not finished. William, who had remained silent through everything, picked up his own phone. Two brothers separated by distance, divided by years of tension, hardened by the weight of history between them, spoke openly for the first time in months. No intermediaries, no handlers standing by to manage the tone. Just two men, two fathers, two sons of the same family talking. The conversation did not resolve everything. It could not. Decades of protocol and months of accumulated pain do not dissolve in a single phone call. But it opened something, a door that had been sealed for far too long. And for the first time in years, truth and family quietly, tentatively, took precedence over hierarchy and appearances. The halls of Buckingham Palace, those long, grand corridors that had echoed for generations with practiced composure and disciplined restraint, were now filled with something unfamiliar: doubt, uncertainty. The unmistakable feeling that the ground had shifted beneath an institution that had always prided itself on being immovable. Every member of staff, every advisor, every royal aide could feel it. The carefully maintained world they had dedicated themselves to preserving had changed overnight, not through scandal, not through political force, but through something the Pala Sea had never known how to defend itself against: the unguarded, unstoppable truth of a mother's love. Every person within those walls could feel it, a tectonic shift moving silently but unmistakably beneath the surface. History was being made, not with fanfare, not with ceremonial proclamation, not with the grand theatrical gestures the monarchy had always used to mark its defining moments. It was being made quietly, in hushed corridors and private phone calls, through acts of bravery too intimate for any official record, through vulnerability, through truth, through the refusal of one woman to keep pretending. The letter had already done what no royal decree ever could. Its words had traveled far beyond palace walls, beyond borders, beyond the reach of any communications team or legal counsel. It had touched something universal, something that resonated in living rooms and kitchens and quiet corners of the world where ordinary people recognized, in Catherine's pain, a reflection of their own. It reminded a watching world of something the monarchy had spent centuries carefully obscuring: that behind the crown, beneath the etiquette, beyond the gilded walls and the choreographed appearances, humanity persists. Fragile, defiant, utterly uncontainable. The stage was now set. Catherine was ready. Louis's story could no longer be managed, minimized, or silenced. The careful architecture of royal concealment, built over generations, maintained at enormous personal cost, had finally met something it was never designed to withstand. And in that moment, quiet, unannounced, carrying none of the pomp that typically marks a turning point in royal history, a new chapter began. A chapter in which the old rules, the ones that demanded silence over honesty and appearance over humanity, would no longer govern unchallenged. A chapter written not in the language of protocol, but in the language of courage, of love, and of the kind of truth that, once spoken, can never be taken back. The game had changed, and nothing, not tradition, not institution, not centuries of carefully preserved precedent, would ever be quite the same again. Thank you for staying with us through every part of this story. If this moved you, please share it, because some stories deserve to be heard. Like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss what comes next.